The smell of burning ozone and stale coffee was usually the perfume of success in Evan Park's laboratory. But today it smelled distinctly like impending doom. Evan rubbed his eyes, the heels of his hands digging into sockets that felt lined with sandpaper. He had been awake for 36 hours straight, fueled only by an unholy amount of caffeine and the terrifying knowledge that the university dean was bringing a foreign delegation to see his life's work. Evan was not a diplomat. He was a creature of code and solder, a man who felt more comfortable arguing with a machine learning algorithm than ordering a sandwich. He smoothed the front of his wrinkled button-down shirt, wishing he had remembered to iron it, or at least wash it, before this morning. The double doors of the lab hissed open. The dean entered first, his smile tight and predatory, the look of a man hoping to secure a grant that would pay for a new stadium. Behind him flowed the delegation. They were not the gray-suited bureaucrats Evan had expected. They were Asteri. The Asteri Dominion had made contact with Earth 5 years ago, and humanity was still collectively holding its breath. They were tall, elegant, and possessed a stillness that made human fidgeting look evolutionary. But it was the woman in the center who made the air in the room change pressure. Lyra Vey. She moved with a fluid grace that suggested gravity was merely a suggestion she politely agreed to follow. Her skin had a faint, iridescent sheen under the harsh fluorescent lights, and her eyes were large, dark, and luminous, holding the kind of depth that made you feel like you were falling. She wore a high-collared tunic of shifting gray fabric that looked like woven smoke. Evan swallowed hard. His throat clicked. "Dr. Park," the dean boomed, his voice echoing in the cavernous lab. "I would like to introduce Envoy Vey. She is here to evaluate our civilian tech readiness." Lyra stepped forward. She did not offer a hand to shake. Instead, she tilted her head, her gaze sweeping over the chaotic workbenches, the tangles of wire, and finally landing on Evan. "It is a pleasure, Evan Park," she said. Her voice was melodic, but just behind her ear, a small silver implant hummed. It was a translator node, standard issue for diplomats. "You look like you have been fighting a war with your furniture," she added. "And losing." The translator implant sparked blue for a split second, a glitch. Evan blinked. I beg your pardon?" "My apologies," Lyra said, her expression perfectly neutral, though her eyes danced with something that looked suspiciously like amusement. "The translator struggles with idiom. I meant to say you look fatigued." Evan flushed. "Right. Yes. Long night." He turned to his workbench. Sitting there was the prototype. It was a micro-drone medical swarm, thousands of tiny nanobots designed to move as a single fluid entity, capable of entering a wound and stitching it from the inside out. It was brilliant. It was revolutionary. It was also currently vibrating with an ominous hum. "This is the swarm one," Evan said, his voice cracking. "It utilizes a hive mind algorithm to detect biological damage." He tapped the command into his tablet. "Watch." The swarm lifted from the table. It looked like a cloud of shimmering silver dust. It hovered perfectly for 3 seconds. Then, the hum grew to a whine. The formation wobbled. A feedback loop screeched through the speakers, tearing at eardrums. The silver cloud violently expanded, threatening to scatter into shrapnel. Evan frantically tapped the screen. "Abort! Abort sequence!" The command was ignored. The swarm began to spiral, a miniature tornado of sharp metal and confusion. The dean ducked. The security guards behind Lyra reached for weapons that were not there. Evan froze. He was watching his career disintegrate in real time. Then Lyra moved. She did not duck. She did not run. She stepped past Evan, right into the danger zone of the spinning metal cloud. She raised her hand, palm open, fingers splayed in a delicate fan. "Lyra?" Evan shouted. "Get back!" She ignored him. She closed her eyes and tilted her head as if listening to a song no one else could hear. She whispered something. It was not English. It was not any language Evan had ever heard on the news feeds. It was a sequence of sounds, sharp and clicking, then rolling and soft. The translator behind her ear did not translate. It whined, a high-pitched protest, and then went silent. The swarm stopped. It did not fall. It simply froze in midair, the chaotic spiral snapping into a perfect, geometric sphere. The whine of the motors died down to a gentle, rhythmic thrumming, like a cat purring. The sphere floated down and settled gently onto the workbench, deactivating with a soft chime. Silence stretched in the lab, thick and heavy. Lyra opened her eyes. She looked at the machine, then at Evan. "It was lonely," she said softly. Evan stared at her. "Lonely? It is a machine. It was looking for a signal it could not find," she corrected. "I gave it a focal point." The dean stood up, dusting off his knees, looking flustered. "Amazing. Simply amazing. A demonstration of the fail-safes, yes?" Evan opened his mouth to say no. That was a catastrophic failure. But Lyra cut him off. "Precisely," she said, turning to the dean with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "The responsiveness of the system to external calming protocols is exemplary. We have seen enough here." She turned to leave, her retinue flowing around her like water. As she passed Evan, she paused. The smell of her was unlike the ozone in the lab. She smelled like rain on hot stone and something sweet, like crushed violets. "Do not trust the calibration on your third emitter," she whispered to him. "It is off by 0.04%. Then she was gone. 2 hours later, Evan was sitting in the empty lab, staring at the third emitter. She was right. It was off by exactly 0.04%. How did she know that? How could she possibly know that without running a diagnostic? The doors hissed open again. Evan looked up, expecting the janitor. It was a man in a suit that cost more than Evan's student loan debt. He held a briefcase and a smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror for 3 hours that morning. "Mr. Park," the man said. "My name is Sterling. I represent a private contracting firm that works closely with the Dominion Trade Delegation." Evan narrowed his eyes. "I do not have a resume on file." "We know," Sterling said. "We are not interested in your resume. We are interested in what happened today. We need a consultant. Someone who understands the eccentricities of our visitor's technology." He slid a piece of paper across the workbench. Evan looked at it. It was a consulting contract. The figure at the bottom was not a salary. It was a ransom. It was enough money to buy the lab, the building, and possibly the dean. "This is absurd," Evan said. "Hazard pay," Sterling said smoothly. "And silence pay. The job is simple. Be available. Answer questions, do not ask them." Evan signed. He told himself it was for the research. He told himself he needed the funding. But as he signed his name, he knew he was lying. He wanted to know how she had stopped the swarm. Sterling gave him an address, a high-security diplomatic residence in the center of the city. "Be there at 8. Evan arrived at 7:55. The building was a fortress of glass and steel, guarded by men who looked like they chewed gravel for breakfast. They scanned his retina, his fingerprints, and the heat signature of his coffee thermos. He was led down a sterile white corridor that seemed to go on forever. There were no pictures on the walls, no plants, no signs of life. It felt like a hospital for ghosts. At the end of the hall, Sitting on a sleek, uncomfortable-looking bench was Lyra. She was alone. Her guards were at the far end of the hall, facing away, but their posture was tense. Lyra looked up as Evan approached. She looked smaller without her entourage. The luminous quality of her eyes was dimmed, as if she had turned down the voltage. "You came," she said. "You offered me a small fortune," Evan said, clutching his messenger bag. "I did not offer it," Lyra said. "My handlers did. They want to know how your machine almost killed me, and they want you to fix it so it can be sold." Evan sat down next to her, leaving a respectful foot of distance between them. "Is that what you want?" Lyra looked at the blank white wall opposite them. "I want to know why you built a machine that mimics a hive mind. Evan Park. Humans usually fear the collective. You prize individuality above all else." "It is not about the collective," Evan said, surprised. "It is about support. If one drone fails, the others pick up the load. No one part has to carry the weight alone." Lyra turned her head slowly. She looked at him with that same terrifying precision she had used in the lab. She was mapping him. She was looking at the dark circles under his eyes, the frayed collar of his shirt, the nervous tapping of his finger on his knee. "No one carries the weight alone," she repeated softly. "That must be nice." She sounded incredibly sad. "They are watching us," she said, her voice dropping to a register the translator struggled to catch. "Who?" "Everyone. My people. Your people. The Dominion does not like variables, Evan, and I am a variable." She leaned in closer. The scent of rain and violets washed over him again. "I am not supposed to talk to you," she said. "I am supposed to evaluate you, extract your data, and leave. But your lab, it was the first place on this loud, chaotic planet that felt quiet inside my head. Your machines do not scream." "They were screaming pretty loud this morning," Evan offered, trying to lighten the mood. Lyra laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, like a bell. "No, that was not screaming. That was singing off-key." She stood up abruptly. "Come." "Where?" "To your home," she said. Evan blinked. "My home? Why?" "Because this hallway smells like antiseptic and despair," Lyra said. "And I want to see where a man who builds machines to care for each other lives." Evan's apartment was not prepared for royalty. It was barely prepared for human habitation. It was a fourth-floor walk-up in a brick building that had survived 3 zoning wars. He tried to kick a pile of laundry under the sofa as Lyra entered, flanked by 2 stone-faced security officers. The officers immediately began sweeping the room with handheld scanners. One of them opened Evan's fridge and stared judgmentally at a jar of pickles that had expired during the previous administration. "Clear," the officer barked. "Wait outside," Lyra commanded. The officer hesitated. "Ma'am, protocol dictates—" "Outside," Lyra said. Her voice did not raise in volume, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The officer bowed stiffly and retreated, closing the door. Lyra let out a long breath, her shoulders slumping. She wandered around the small living room. She touched the spine of a book. She ran a finger along the dust on the television. She stopped in front of a shelf. It was Evan's shame. It was his collection of vintage sci-fi memorabilia, action figures, model spaceships, things he had spent way too much money on during lonely nights on eBay. She picked up a small plastic figure. It was a limited edition character from a 90s anime, a girl with giant blue hair and a very impractical armor set. "Is this a religious icon?" Lyra asked, holding it up to the light. "A human fertility idol?" Evan snatched it from her hand, his face burning. No, it is a collectible. It is just for display. Lyra smirked. A collectible. You humans collect such strange things. You hold on to plastic while you throw away moments. She turned to face him. The playfulness vanished. The air between them grew thick, charged with the same electricity that had been in the lab. Why did you let me come here? Evan? Evan looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the exhaustion etched around her eyes, the tension in her jaw. He saw a woman who was being paraded around like a prize pony, scrutinized by two civilizations and trusted by neither. Because you looked like you needed to escape, he said honestly. Lyra took a step closer. The translator behind her ear gave a soft chirp. I do not have friends, Evan, she said. I have handlers. I have subjects. I have enemies. I do not have anyone who just sees me. I see you, Evan whispered. He did not know why he said it. It was a dangerous thing to say. It was a line that crossed professional boundaries, planetary boundaries, and common sense. Lyra reached out. Her fingers brushed his cheek. Her skin was cool, smooth as polished marble. Show me, she said. It happened fast, and yet it felt like it took 1,000 years. The kiss was not tentative. It was a collision. It was the sudden release of pressure from a vessel that had been holding too much for too long. Evan forgot about the security guards outside. He forgot about the contract. He forgot that she was an alien envoy and he was a nerd with an expired jar of pickles. He only knew that she was trembling, and that she was holding on to him as if he were the only solid thing in a universe of gas and void. They moved to the bedroom, a clumsy tangle of limbs and desperation. It was not like the movies. It was messy. It was real. Lyra's skin hummed against his, a low-frequency vibration that made his teeth ache in a pleasant way. The translator implant sparked and fizzed, unable to translate the raw, unfiltered language of skin on skin. It was intense. It was emotionally raw. It was two people crossing the line between interesting and inevitable, clinging like they might vanish if they let go. When Evan woke up, the sunlight was streaming through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. The bed beside him was empty. He sat up, panic seizing his chest. Lyra? Silence. He stumbled out to the living room. The apartment was empty. The security guards were gone. The only proof that she had been there at all was the faint scent of violets lingering on his pillow and a piece of paper folded on his kitchen table. It was written on the back of his consulting contract. The handwriting was jagged, angular, as if she had struggled with the pen. If you are scared, you do not have to be alone. It was his own handwriting. He realized she had not written it. She had found a note he had written to himself years ago, a mantra he kept pinned to his mirror during grad school. She had left it for him. Evan sat down on the floor. He felt gutted. He felt more alone than he had ever felt in his life. The week that followed was a blur of gray. Evan went to the lab. He stared at the swarm. He fixed the third emitter. He did not hear from Sterling. He did not see Lyra on the news. It was as if she had been erased from the timeline. He replayed that night over and over in his head. Had he imagined it? Had he been a temporary distraction for a bored royal? Then, exactly 7 days later, there was a knock on his door. It was not the heavy pound of security, and it was a soft, hesitant rap. Evan opened the door. Lyra stood there. She was wearing a heavy cloak with the hood pulled up, hiding her face. She looked pale. The luminescence of her skin was dull, flickering like a dying light bulb. Lyra, Evan breathed. She did not say hello. She raised her left wrist. A holographic projection sprang to life in the space between them. It was a medical readout. Complex alien glyphs swirled in a double helix, pulsing with a rhythmic red light. Evan stared at it. He did not need to be a xenobiologist to understand the rhythm. It was a heartbeat. Lyra lowered her hood. Her eyes were wide, filled with a terrifying mixture of awe and absolute panic. The translator behind her ear sparked, emitting a harsh static noise before stuttering the words out. "It should be impossible," she stammered. "The genetic divergence is too great. The incompatibility—" Evan looked from the hologram to her face. After their passionate night, the alien girl got pregnant, and the human nerd hired 100 caretakers. The thought hit Evan with the force of a freight train, but the reality was standing in front of him, shivering in his hallway. "They will kill it," Lyra whispered. "The houses. They will see it as a weapon, or an abomination, and your people. They will want to dissect it." She grabbed his shirt, her grip surprisingly strong. "Evan, I do not know what to do." Evan looked at her. He looked at the terror in her eyes. The paralysis that had gripped him for a week shattered. The part of his brain that built drone swarms, the part that solved impossible engineering problems, suddenly slammed into high gear. Structure. He needed structure. He needed redundancy. He needed a fail-safe. "Come inside," Evan said. His voice was steady. It surprised even him. He pulled her into the apartment and locked the door. He engaged the deadbolt. He pushed a chair under the handle. Then he turned to his computer. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked, watching him type with furious speed. Evan did not look up. He was already liquidating his savings account. He was selling his stocks. He was draining the absurd consulting fee he had received from Sterling. "I am building a swarm," he said. He pulled up a search engine. He typed in private security. He typed in concierge medicine. He typed in doula network. He typed in xenobiology experts. He made calls. His voice was clipped, professional, manic. "Yes, I need immediate availability. Yes, NDA is fine. Triple the rate? Fine. Quadruple it. I need you here in 1 hour. No, not a hospital. My apartment. Yes, bring the equipment. All of it." He signed digital contracts so fast his hand cramped. He hired a team of ex-military bodyguards who specialized in high-risk extraction. He hired 3 trauma nurses. He hired a nutritionist who claimed to specialize in rare metabolisms. He hired a chef. He hired a team of decoys. Lyra watched him from the sofa, bewildered. "Evan, stop. You cannot just hire people." "I can," Evan said, sweating. We need a perimeter, and then we need protocols. Within 3 hours, the first wave arrived. The apartment building's hallway, usually quiet, was suddenly filled with people. A large man with a scar across his face was installing biometric locks on Evan's front door. A woman in scrubs was setting up an IV drip stand in the living room. A chef was inspecting the kitchen, looking disgusted by the stove. Evan stood in the middle of the chaos, holding a clipboard he had found, directing traffic. "You, Security Team Alpha, secure the fire escape. You, Nutrition, I need a meal plan that is high in whatever she needs. Figure it out." The door opened again. An older woman walked in. She was carrying a worn leather bag and wearing a cardigan that looked like it had seen better decades. She looked around the room, at the armed guards, at the frantic nurses, at Evan trembling with his clipboard. She walked right up to Evan. "Are you the father?" she asked. Her voice was like gravel and honey. Evan nodded, his eyes wide. Yes. And who are all these people?" Caretakers, Evan stammered. 100 of them. Well, not all here yet. Shifts, rotations. I have a spreadsheet." The woman looked at the spreadsheet. Then she looked at Lyra, who was sitting on the sofa, looking overwhelmed and small. Then she looked back at Evan. "Honey," she said, poking him in the chest with a finger that felt like iron. "You don't need 100. You need a spine." Evan blinked. "Excuse me?" "She is not a project," the woman said. "She is a pregnant woman, and she is scared. Send the circus home. Keep the muscle if you must, but calm down." Before Evan could respond, a shout came from the computer terminal in the corner. One of the tech guys Evan had hired, a paranoid hacker he knew from grad school, was pointing at the screen. "Evan, we have a problem." Evan ran over. "What is it?" The hacker pointed. It was a video feed. It was grainy, black and white surveillance footage. It showed Lyra, hood up, entering Evan's building 3 hours ago. "It is leaking," the hacker said. "It is on the dark net. It is hitting the public channels in 10 minutes. Someone uploaded it." Evan stared at the screen. The timestamp was legitimate. "Who?" Evan asked. "Unknown source," the hacker said. "But the caption, look at the caption." Evan read the text scrolling beneath the video. "The envoy's secret. The human variable. The asset is in play." Evan looked up. Lyra was standing behind him, staring at the screen. Her face was white. "They know," she whispered. Evan turned to the room. The chaos had stopped. The 100 caretakers, or the 20 that had arrived so far, were looking at him. "Lock it down," Evan said. His voice was no longer manic. It was cold. "Secure the windows. Cut the Wi-Fi. No one leaves. No one enters." He took Lyra's hand. She squeezed it back, her fingers ice cold. "We are not running," Evan said to her. "Not yet." He looked at the midwife. You stay. The rest of you. Earn your pay." Outside, in the distance, the sound of sirens began to wail. They were coming closer. The transformation of Evan Park's apartment from a bachelor pad of loose circuitry and stale pizza into a fortress of solitude, or rather, a fortress of solitude populated by enough people to field a small football league, happened in 48 hours. It was a logistical nightmare that Evan, in his panicked brilliance, had organized into a spreadsheet that looked less like a schedule and more like the launch trajectory for a Mars mission. The hallway, once home to a flickering light bulb and the smell of Mrs. Higgins's boiled cabbage, was now patrolled by 3 rotating drones that hummed like angry wasps. The front door had been reinforced with a steel alloy usually reserved for bank vaults, and a retinal scanner now sat awkwardly above the peeling paint of the peephole. Inside, the chaos was organized, but it was still chaos. "Move the protein synthesizer to the kitchen island," Evan commanded, waving his clipboard like a marshal's baton. "And for the love of physics, do not plug the perimeter sensors into the same outlet as the toaster. We blew a fuse 3 times yesterday." The living room was a maze of equipment. Blackout curtains, thick and heavy as lead, sealed the windows, plunging the room into perpetual twilight illuminated only by the blink of server racks and the glow of monitors. In the center of this storm sat Lyra Vey. She was curled into the corner of Evan's worn sofa, wrapped in a blanket that looked ridiculous against the ethereal, shimmering quality of her skin. She was watching a large man in tactical gear argue with a woman in green scrubs. "She needs ultraviolet exposure," the nurse insisted, crossing her arms. "Her physiology depends on stellar radiation for serotonin regulation. You are keeping her in a cave. I am keeping her alive." The security lead, a man named Miller who looked like he had been carved out of granite, shot back. "Windows are vectors. Vectors are death. You want sunlight? Buy a lamp." Lyra let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. It was the absurdity of it that broke her. She was a royal envoy of the Asteri Dominion, a woman who had dined with warlords and negotiated star system treaties. and now she was the subject of a custody battle between a nurse and a mercenary in a Queen's walk-up. Evan stepped between them, holding his clipboard up like a shield. "Compromise," Evan said, his voice cracking slightly before he found his command register. "Miller, we keep the blackout curtains. Sarah, we order full-spectrum UV arrays and rig them to the ceiling. I will pay for rush delivery. Now, clear the lane. The nutrition team is trying to get through with the algae paste." The combatants dispersed. Evan took a deep breath, checked a box on his spreadsheet, and turned to Lyra. He froze. She was looking at him, her large eyes swimming with moisture, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. "Are you okay?" Evan asked, rushing over and dropping to his knees beside the sofa. "Is it the noise? I can enact the silence protocol. I have a whistle." Lyra reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were cool, grounding him. "It is not the noise, Evan," she said softly. "It is this." She gestured to the room, to the armed guards checking their weapons by his anime collection, to the drone hovering by the bathroom door. "You have built a cage," she said. "A very expensive, very loving cage. But I feel like a fragile artifact you are afraid to break." Evan pulled back, stung. "I am trying to keep you safe. The video leak. The world knows you are here." "I know," Lyra said. "But I am not a vase. Evan, I am an envoy. I am used to danger. I am not used to helplessness." She looked down at her hands. The translator behind her ear gave a soft, mournful hum. "And I am terrified," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "Not of the assassins, but of what is happening inside me. It feels fast. Evan, too fast." Before Evan could comfort her, a sharp chime cut through the room. It was not one of Evan's alarms. It was a sound that vibrated in the teeth, a high-pitched, crystalline resonance. Lyra stiffened. Evan scrambled for his tablet. "What is that? A breach?" "No," Lyra said, her face draining of color. "It is a summons." She pulled a slim glass-like device from the folds of her blanket. It was pulsing with a harsh white light. "The Dominion High Council," she read, the translator stripping the emotion from her voice but leaving the dread. "I am ordered to return to the flagship in orbit immediately." "Routine medical evaluation?" Evan stood up. "You cannot go. It is a trap. It is a diplomatic order," Lyra said, standing up as well. "If I refuse, I lose my immunity. If I lose my immunity, your government can legally storm this apartment and drag me to a black site." She walked to the window, pulling back the edge of the blackout curtain just a fraction. "My escort team is already en route," she said. Evan checked the external cameras. A sleek black hover car with diplomatic plates had just touched down on the street below, scattering pigeons and terrifying Mrs. Higgins. 4 figures emerged. They were Asteri, tall and slender, wearing the white robes of the High House Guard. But there was something wrong. They moved with a synchronized, eerie silence that lacked the fluidity of Lyra's usual detail. "That is not your team," Evan said, zooming in on the feed. "No," Lyra whispered. "They are House Varys, my political rivals." Evan's mind raced. He turned to Miller. "Lock the door. No one comes in." He grabbed his laptop. "I need to buy us time. I can file a counter-injunction. I can claim medical fragility. I can—" He stopped. He was staring at a document he had pulled up. The consulting contract he had signed with Sterling. The man with the expensive suit and the predatory smile. He had been so focused on the money, on the resources it gave him to protect Lyra, that he had skimmed the addendums. Now, the words seemed to burn on the screen. Clause 44B. The contractor agrees to full biosecurity compliance. In the event of biological contamination or cross-species anomaly, the contractor waives all rights to physical autonomy and agrees to immediate containment by Dominion-affiliated proxies. Evan felt the blood drain from his face. Oh no, he breathed. What? Lyra asked, stepping closer. I signed it, Evan said, his voice hollow. I signed a warrant for my own arrest. And yours? This is not a consulting gig. Lyra, it is a bounty. They maneuvered me. They knew. He looked up at her, horror dawning. They knew about the baby before we did. Lyra stared at him, and then she laughed. It was a bitter, jagged sound. Of course they did, she said. They monitor my cycle. They monitor my caloric intake. They probably knew the moment conception occurred. She grabbed Evan's shoulders. Listen to me. Evan, you do not understand what this child is. It is a baby, Evan said. No, Lyra said fiercely. To the Asteri houses, it is a weapon. My people are stagnant. Evan, we are dying slowly. Our genetic lines are too pure, too brittle. A hybrid? A child with human resilience and Asteri longevity? It could legitimize a coup. She paced the small space between the coffee table and the sofa. If House Varys gets this baby, they will use it to overthrow the Dominion High Council. Civil war will burn across 3 systems. And if they lose, they will use the child to force Earth into a protectorate treaty. They will claim humanity is dangerous and needs to be managed for the safety of the hybrid. Evan watched her. He saw the diplomat fall away, replaced by the mother. He saw the terror of a woman who knew that her body was no longer her own, but a battlefield map. He stepped into her path, stopping her pacing. He did not grab her. He simply stood there, solid and unmoving, until she stopped and looked at him. I do not care about the houses, Evan said. I do not care about the treaty. He reached out, his hand hovering near her waist. He waited. He waited until she nodded, a microscopic dip of her chin, before he closed the distance and pulled her in. I care about you, he said into her hair. And I care about the fact that you like pickles now, and that you snore when you are stressed. I do not snore, Lyra murmured against his chest, but the tension was leaving her frame, melting away under his touch. You do, Evan said. It is adorable, like a very small engine trouble. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. We are not going to the ship, he said, and we are not staying here. The moment shifted. The frenetic energy of the apartment seemed to dampen around them. The caretakers, the guards, the drones, they faded into the background. It was just the 2 of them in the eye of the hurricane. This was not the desperate, adrenaline-fueled passion of their first night. This was deliberate. It was heavy with the weight of choice. Evan ran his thumb over her cheekbone, tracing the line of her alien geometry with a reverence that made Lyra's breath hitch. I am sorry I built a cage, Evan whispered. Lyra closed her eyes, leaning into his palm. You did not build a cage, Evan. You built a shield, but shields are heavy. We will carry it together, Evan said. He leaned down and kissed her. It was slow, terrifyingly tender. It was a promise made in a room full of weapons. They clung to each other, not because they were afraid of vanishing, but because they were the only 2 real things in a world that was rapidly turning them into symbols. A thud echoed from the kitchen. It was a heavy, wet sound, like a sack of flour hitting the floor. Evan broke the kiss instantly. Miller! The security lead was already moving. He swept into the kitchen, his sidearm drawn. One of the caretakers, a young man named David who had been hired to handle logistics, was on the floor. He was convulsing. White foam bubbled at the corners of his mouth. Gas! Miller roared. Masks! Now! The apartment erupted. The nurses dove for their bags. The guards slammed the visors of their helmets down. Evan grabbed Lyra, shoving her face into his shirt, dragging her toward the bedroom where the air filtration unit had its own independent power supply. The building's main air vent screamed as the sensors triggered. A red light began to strobe in the hallway. "They are in the vents!" Evan yelled, slamming the bedroom door and jamming a towel under the crack. They knew the rotation. David was by the intake valve. Lyra was coughing, her eyes streaming. Evan, the schedule. They hacked it, Evan realized, his stomach dropping, or someone sold it. He looked at his watch. The attack was precise. It was timed exactly for the shift change, when the perimeter would be softest. Evan looked at Lyra. She was terrified, but she was looking to him. She was waiting for the plan, and for the first time in his life. Evan Park did not feel like a nerd. He did not feel like a socially awkward engineer who apologized to toasters. He felt a cold, hard clarity settle over him. He keyed his headset. All units. This is Park. Initiate protocol exodus. There was a pause on the line. Then Miller's voice crackled back, sounding impressed. Copy that, boss. Protocol exodus. Evan turned to Lyra. Can you run? Lyra wiped her eyes. Yes. Then let's go. The door to the bedroom opened, but not into the hallway. Evan kicked aside a pile of laundry to reveal a maintenance hatch he had spent the last 2 days illegally widening with a laser cutter. Down the chute, he ordered. It drops into the laundry room in the basement. They slid down the metal tube, landing in a pile of lint and darkness. The basement was already buzzing with activity. The Caretaker army was earning its pay. 3 identical black SUVs were idling near the loading dock. A team of decoys, 3 women of Lyra's height wearing hooded cloaks, and 3 men wearing Evan's signature glasses and cardigans were scrambling into 2 of the vehicles. Go, Evan shouted. The first 2 SUVs shrieked out of the garage, turning left and right, peeling away into the rainy New York night with sirens blazing. Evan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward an unassuming rusted plumbing van in the corner. We take the plumber's van? Lyra asked. Breathless. Nobody shoots the plumber, Evan said, sliding the side door open. They dove into the back. It was armored. Evan had paid extra for the Kevlar lining. Miller jumped into the driver's seat. 2 more guards squeezed in the back with them. The van lurched forward, exiting the garage just as a drone exploded overhead, showering the street with sparks. They hit the city streets, merging into the flow of traffic. Rain lashed against the metal sides of the van, through the small, reinforced slit of a window. Evan could see the neon smear of the city. Sirens wailed in the distance, chasing the decoy cars. Inside the van, it was dark and smelled of grease and fear. Lyra was shaking. Evan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her, shielding her body with his own as the van bounced over potholes. He pulled out his tablet. The screen was awash of red alerts. Bank accounts frozen, identity flagged, warrant issued. We are ghosts, Evan said, his voice tight. They scrubbed me. Lyra looked at the screen. We have nowhere to go. Yes, we do, Evan said. I have a secondary site, a clinic off the grid in Jersey. The doctor owes me a favor. He is not in the system. They drove for an hour, leaving the glittering canyons of the city for the industrial wasteland of the outskirts. The rain turned to sleet. The safe clinic was a nondescript brick building behind a recycling plant. Miller pulled the van into the shadow of a loading bay. Stay here, Miller said. I'll clear it. He went inside. Minutes ticked by. Evan counted them. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3. Miller returned. It's clear. Doctor is inside. Evan helped Lyra out. She was stumbling now, her skin burning hot to the touch. "Evan," she whispered. "It hurts." I know. We are here." They entered the clinic. It was clean, smelling of bleach. A doctor in a white coat stood by a gurney. But he was not alone. Standing in the corner, leaning against a counter with casual menace, was a man in a gray suit. He was not a stary. He was human. He looked like every intelligence officer from every bad movie Evan had ever seen, except his eyes were dead. "Mr. Park," the man said, "we have been waiting." Evan froze. He gripped Lyra's arm. "Miller?" He turned. Miller was standing by the door, his weapon drawn. But it was not pointed at the man in the suit. It was pointed at the floor, in a position of rest. He would not intervene. Compromised. Evan realized. The whole network. "Who are you?" Evan asked, stepping in front of Lyra. "Director Cole, Human Intelligence," the man said. "We are the good guys. Evan, we don't want the alien houses to have the baby. We want to protect it." He took a step forward. "We can make all your legal problems go away. The warrant, gone. The frozen assets, returned. We will put you and Ms. Vey in a penthouse in the Alps. You will be safe." "What is the catch?" Evan asked. Cole smiled. "No catch. We just need the data, the biological markers, the DNA sequencing of the fetus. And, of course, once the child is born, we will need to retain it for study, to ensure it is safe for the general population." Evan felt Lyra stiffen behind him. "You want to experiment on my child," Lyra hissed. "We want to understand the threat," Cole corrected. Evan looked at Miller. "You knew?" Miller looked away. "The money was better. Kid, and it's my species. Patriotism pays." Cole extended a hand. "Give us the medical drive. Evan, hand over the girl. We will take care of her. You can go back to your robots." The room was silent. The hum of the refrigerator was deafening. Evan looked at the hand. He looked at the gun in Miller's hand. He looked at Lyra, who was trembling, clutching her stomach, her eyes wide with the realization that no one, not on Earth or in the stars, viewed her as anything other than a biological container. Evan Park was a logical man. He knew the odds. He knew that refusing a government intelligence officer while held at gunpoint was statistically synonymous with suicide. "No," Evan said. Cole blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Evan said. His voice shook, violently, but he did not step aside. "I am not giving you her data. I am not giving you the baby, and I am certainly not giving you Lyra." Cole sighed. "Evan, be reasonable. You cannot win this." "I don't have to win," Evan said. "I just have to be annoying enough to buy time." He reached into his pocket. Miller tensed, raising the gun. "Don't!" Miller shouted. Evan pulled out his hand. He was holding a small, black remote. "This isn't a weapon," Evan yelled. "It's the override for the building's fire suppression system. I wired it to the clinic's mainframe while we were driving." He pressed the button. The ceiling exploded, not with fire but with foam. High-pressure, chemical fire suppressant foam blasted from every nozzle in the room, filling the space with a blinding, suffocating white cloud instantly. Miller fired a shot blindly. It pinged off a metal cabinet. "Run!" Evan grabbed Lyra. They bolted for the back exit. They slipped on the foam, crashing through the double doors into the alleyway. The cold air hit them like a slap. "The van!" Lyra gasped. "No!" Evan shouted. "They have the keys, the drone!" He whistled, a sharp, piercing sound. From the roof of the van, a large, heavy-duty cargo drone, one of Evan's heavy lifters, detached itself and swooped down. It wasn't designed for passengers, but it had cargo straps. Evan shoved Lyra onto the cargo netting, scrambling up beside her. "Home!" he screamed at the drone. "Override destination, the reserve!" The drone lurched upward, its motors screaming under the weight. They lifted off just as the clinic door burst open. Cole and Miller ran out, weapons raised. Bullets whizzed past them, sparking against the drone's metal chassis. They rose higher, into the sleet, into the dark, swaying dangerously as the wind caught them. They flew for miles, skimming the rooftops of warehouses. Finally, the drone sputtered and set them down in a muddy field near an old train yard. Evan rolled off the netting, gasping for air. He crawled over to Lyra. Lyra? She was lying in the mud, staring up at the rain. Her skin was no longer iridescent. It was gray. Veins of dark purple were spreading from her stomach, spiderwebbing across her torso. "Evan," she whispered. Her voice was wet. "I am here," Evan said, panic rising in his throat like bile. "I am here. We are safe." "No," she said. She grabbed his hand. Her skin was burning hot, a fever that defied human biology. "The baby," she gasped. "It is taking too much, my body. It thinks the gravity is wrong, the atmosphere. It is rejecting the pregnancy." Evan scanned her with his wrist comp. The readings were erratic. Her immune system was attacking the fetus. The fetus was fighting back, drawing resources at an accelerated rate. She was dying. "We need a hospital," Evan said. "No hospital on Earth can fix this." Lyra choked out. "I need stabilizer." "What stabilizer?" "A steri biocrystal," she said. "It is on the ship, the flagship. The one you just refused to go to?" "Yes." She coughed, and a speck of silver blood appeared on her lips. "It is rare. They keep it in the vault. Evan, if I do not get it, I will burn out. In hours." Evan looked up at the sky. The clouds were thick, blocking out the stars. But he knew what was up there. The Dominion flagship, a fortress floating in orbit. He looked down at Lyra, the woman who had crossed galaxies to find a quiet place, only to end up in a muddy field in New Jersey. He squeezed her hand. "Then we are going to the ship," he said. "How?" Lyra whispered, her eyes closing. Evan looked at the drone. He looked at the distant lights of the city. He thought of his 100 caretakers, scattered but loyal. He thought of the swarm he had built. "We are going to crash the party," Evan said. He picked her up. She was terrifyingly light. "Hang on, Lyra. Just hang on." The shuttle smelled of recycled air and expensive alien cleaning agents, a scent that reminded Evan Park of a hospital built inside a diamond. He sat on a jump seat, his knees bouncing with a nervous rhythm that rattled the tool belt strapped to his waist. Beside him, Lyra Vey looked like a galaxy dying in slow motion. Her skin, usually a canvas of iridescent starlight, was ashen, the gray dullness spreading from her throat to her fingertips. "We are docking in 2 minutes," Miller's voice crackled over the comms. "Remember, on this frequency, I am not Miller. I am Security Chief Varus. And you are not Evan Park. You are Tech Support Unit 4. Evan adjusted his glasses, which were currently displaying a live schematic of the Ethelgard, the Dominion flagship orbiting Earth like a silver judgment. "Copy that," Evan said. His voice sounded thin in the pressurized cabin. The plan was, by Evan's own estimation, a statistical impossibility. It was a heist pulled from the bad plot of a movie he would have criticized on a forum at 3 in the morning. But the math of Lyra's blood work left no room for critique. She needed the stabilizer. The stabilizer was in the ship's medical vault. The vault was only accessible during high-level diplomatic functions when the biolocks were cycled for guest entry. Tonight was the Unity Gala. It was exactly the kind of event Evan hated. Crowded, loud, and filled with people who judged your worth by your shoes. It was exactly the kind of event Lyra understood as a battlefield. Evan looked at his army. They were crammed into the shuttle's cargo bay. 3 nurses were dressed as catering staff, adjusting their synthetic collars. 2 ex-military bodyguards were squeezed into the ceremonial armor of the Dominion House Guard, looking uncomfortable but lethal. And then there were the decoys, the 3 projection cloaks modified by Evan in the back of a fleeing van, hummed on portable stands. When activated, they would project a perfect hard light hologram of Lyra, pregnant, radiant, and walking, to draw eyes and security sensors away from the real woman currently shivering under a thermal blanket. "We are docking," the pilot announced. "Gravity adjustment in 3, 2, 1. The lurch was not physical, it was internal. Evan felt his stomach float into his throat as the artificial gravity of the massive ship took hold. It felt heavier than Earth, denser, like the air itself was pressing down to test his structural integrity. The airlock hissed open. "Showtime," Evan whispered. The interior of the Ethel Guard was not designed for humans. The corridors were too tall, the light too white. It was a silence that felt heavy, a quiet that swallowed the sound of footsteps. The floor was a smooth, glass-like material that seemed to ripple when stepped on, as if they were walking on the surface of a frozen lake. Evan pushed Lyra's wheelchair, disguised as a cargo hover sled loaded with audio equipment, down the service corridor. Lyra was slumped forward, a technician's cap pulled low over her face. "Status?" Evan muttered into his collar. "We are in position," came the voice of Sarah, the lead nurse, now posing as a server. "The canapes are deployed. The distraction team is active in the East Wing." Evan turned a corner and nearly collided with a patrol. It was a squad of 4 Dominion officers, their uniforms woven from light-absorbing fabric that seemed to cut holes in the bright corridor. Evan froze. His heart hammered a frantic code against his ribs. "Make way," he said, trying to pitch his voice to the bored, annoyed tone of IT support everywhere. "Equipment transport for the gala stage." The lead officer stopped. He looked at the hover sled. He looked at Evan. His eyes were vertical slits of amber, cold and predatory. He stepped forward, reaching for the cover on the sled. Evan's hand drifted toward the stun pulse emitter in his pocket. Then, the officer looked at Lyra. She had lifted her head just an inch. The shadow of the cap obscured her face, but a single lock of her hair, now glowing faintly with the stress of her condition, slipped out. The officer's eyes widened. He did not reach for his weapon. He did not sound the alarm. He dropped to one knee. The movement was fluid, instant, and terrifyingly submissive. Behind him, the other 3 officers did the same, their foreheads nearly touching the floor. "High blood," the officer whispered. The translator picked up the tremor in his voice. "We did not know. Forgive us." Evan stared. He looked at Lyra, who simply raised a finger to her lips. "Rise," she whispered. Her voice was weak, but it carried an authority that Evan had never heard in the apartment. It was not the voice of a refugee. It was the voice of someone who owned the floor she was dying on. "Continue your patrol. Speak of this to no one. As you command," the officer said. They rose and marched away, not daring to look back. Evan pushed the sled forward, his hands shaking on the handles. "High blood," he hissed. "They knelt. Lyra, they actually knelt." Lyra let out a ragged breath. "I told you, Evan, I am not just an envoy. You said you were a minor diplomat." "I lied," she said. "I am the 3rd daughter of House Vey, the direct line to the throne. That is why the baby matters. That is why they want to kill us." Evan processed this as he navigated the labyrinthine halls. He was not just dating an alien, he was dating a princess. A man who ate cereal for dinner 3 nights a week, was smuggling royalty through her own flagship. They reached the service elevator. The gala was on the observation deck, 50 levels up, inside the elevator. The gravity shifted again, tilting sideways as the car moved horizontally through the ship's spine. Through the viewport, Evan saw Earth. It hung in the black void like a blue marble, fragile and impossibly far away. It looked like a promise. It looked like a threat. "We are approaching the gala level," Miller said over the comms. "Decoys are active." On the screen of Evan's wrist comp, he saw the chaos. In the grand ballroom, 3 shimmering Lyras were walking through the crowd. Security teams were scrambling, confused by the multiple readings. "Perfect," Evan said. "We have a window." The elevator opened, not into the ballroom, but into the VIP anteroom. It was empty, save for a single guard standing by the vault door. The vault door was a masterpiece of bioengineering, a spiraling iris of metal that required a genetic key to open. Evan parked the sled. "Stay here," he told Lyra. He walked up to the guard. He needed to be smooth. He needed to be diplomatic. He needed to distract the guard long enough for the hacker team to loop the camera feed. "Greetings," Evan said, smiling his best, harmless human smile. "I am here to inspect the atmospheric scrubbers." The guard, a towering asteri with skin like obsidian, stared at him. Evan's translator implant, a cheap black market model he had bought in a panic, gave a sharp whine. The guard's expression shifted from boredom to extreme shock. Evan frowned. "What did I say?" The guard took a step back, hand on his weapon, but looking more confused than threatened. "You just offered to merge your genetic line with my broodmother in exchange for heir privileges." Evan's face went hot. "No! No! That is not what I meant!" The guard blinked. "It was a very generous offer. But I am on duty." From the sled, a sound erupted. It was a laugh. Lyra, despite the pain, despite the deadly gravity of the situation, was laughing. She sounded breathless, wheezing, but the amusement was pure. She stood up, shedding the blanket. She walked over to Evan, grabbed his hand, and kissed his knuckles. "You are ridiculous," she whispered, "and I love you." She turned to the guard. Her eyes flashed with royal fire. "Open the door, Lieutenant, or I will tell your broodmother you declined a marriage proposal from a human engineer." The guard's jaw dropped. He looked at Lyra, recognized the high blood marking on her neck, and tapped the code instantly. The door hissed open. "Leave us," Lyra commanded. The guard fled. Evan and Lyra stepped into the vault. It was a small, circular room lined with stasis pods containing the rarest biological compounds in the galaxy. In the center, on a pedestal of floating light, sat the canister for the biocrystal stabilizer. Evan rushed forward. "This is it. This fixes everything." He reached for the canister. It was light. Too light. He popped the seal. Empty. Inside the canister, where the glowing blue crystal should have been, was a small, blinking red device, a tracking seed. "It's a trap," Evan said, the words tasting like ash. Behind them, the vault door slammed shut. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the room. It was not a recording. It was a live feed. A tall, slender asteri man appeared. He wore the high-collared robes of the archivists, the keepers of Dominion law. His face was sharp, intelligent, and weary. "Hello, Lyra," the man said. "Soren," Lyra breathed. Archivist Soren looked at them with a mixture of pity and disdain. He did not look at Evan. He looked only at Lyra. "Did you really think it would be this easy?" Soren asked. "To waltz into the heart of the Dominion and steal the only thing that can keep your mistake alive?" It is not a mistake, Lyra said, leaning against the pedestal for support. It is a child. It is a political catastrophe, Soren corrected. And it is killing you. The stabilizer is safe. Lyra, it is in my private collection. I can administer it. I can save you. I can save the child. Give it to us, Evan said, stepping in front of Lyra. Soren's eyes flicked to Evan for the first time. It was like being looked at by a microscope. The human technician, Soren said, Mr. Park, you have been very industrious, but your utility has ended. Soren turned back to Lyra. Here is the offer. High blood. You surrender to my custody. You return to your house. You will carry the child to term under our supervision. And when it is born, you will sign a public declaration. What declaration? Lyra asked. You will name Mr. Park as the biological donor, Soren said calmly. Not a partner, not a husband. A donor. A random genetic sampling used for an experimental procedure. You will erase him from the narrative. He will be returned to Earth, unharmed, with a memory wipe and a generous pension. Evan felt a cold rage settle in his chest. It was not the frantic panic of the last few days, it was something solid. And if she refuses? Evan asked. Then she dies, Soren said simply. The hybrid pregnancy will consume her within 4 hours. Lyra looked at Evan. She looked at the hologram of her mentor, the man who had taught her diplomacy, the man who was now holding her life hostage for the sake of political neatness. No, Lyra said. Soren sighed. Be rational. Lyra. He is a human. He is a footnote in our history. He is the father, Lyra shouted, her voice cracking. Evan stepped forward. He walked right up to the hologram, staring into the projection's eyes. I am not a footnote, Evan said. His voice shook, but his hands were steady. I am not a donor, and I am certainly not a memory you can wipe. He pointed a finger at the archivist. You think because your ships are big and your lives are long that you are important, but you are small. Soren, you are scared of a baby because it doesn't fit in your spreadsheet. Well, I have news for you. I am an engineer. I fix broken systems. And your system is broken. He turned to Lyra. Can you run? Lyra nodded, her eyes fierce. Then let's break his ship. Evan pulled his tool belt. He didn't grab a weapon. He grabbed a multi-tool. He jammed it into the vault's control panel. Miller! Evan yelled into the comms. Blow the breakers! On the other side of the ship, in the maintenance bay, Miller threw a satchel charge into the main power junction. Boom! The lights in the vault died. The artificial gravity flickered, then failed. The entire ship groaned. 0G, Evan said as his feet lifted off the floor. The vault door, having lost power, unsealed manually. Evan kicked it open, floating into the corridor. The scene outside was chaos. The gravity failure had turned the gala into a soup of floating dignitaries and spilled drinks. Go! Evan grabbed Lyra's hand. They kicked off the wall, propelling themselves down the corridor like swimmers. Soren's voice boomed over the emergency speakers. Secure the vault level. Lethal force authorized. Security drones dropped from the ceiling, their red eyes scanning the dark. Left! Lyra shouted. They banked hard, grabbing a handrail and swinging into a service shaft. The shaft was rotating. The ship's backup gravity wheel was spinning up. The walls became the floor, then the ceiling. Evan, the drones. 3 combat drones were pursuing them, lasers charging. Evan tapped his headset. Nurses, now! In the gala hall, the 3 caretakers disguised as catering staff pulled the pins on their serving trays. They were not trays. They were EMP emitters. A pulse of blue light rippled through the ship. The drones pursuing Evan and Lyra seized, sparked, and drifted lifelessly into the wall. But the momentum of the chase was brutal. Lyra was fading fast. The physical exertion of zero-gravity movement was accelerating the toxin buildup in her blood. They reached the server room. This was the secondary objective. If they couldn't get the crystal, they needed the data. Evan floated to the console. He jacked in his tablet. "I need the formula," he muttered, typing with one hand while holding onto a strap with the other. "I need the molecular structure of the stabilizer." The download bar crawled. 10%, 20%. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Magnetic boots. Heavy ones. "They are coming," Lyra whispered. 50%. "Evan, we have to go. 70%. The door blew open. Sparks showered the room. Evan yanked the cord. 82%. Partial file. It would have to be enough. "Out the vent." They shoved themselves into the narrow cooling vent just as laser fire scorched the console they had been using. The crawl through the vent was a nightmare of claustrophobia and heat. They emerged in the shuttle bay. Their shuttle was gone, impounded. But there was a waste disposal pod. "Evan," Lyra said, looking at the trash pod, "you cannot be serious." "It has a heat shield," Evan said, popping the hatch. "Get in." They squeezed into the pod, surrounded by compressed cubes of alien refuse. Evan hot-wired the launch sequence. "Strap in." He hit the button. The pod shot out of the Ethel guard, tumbling into the void. The view of Earth spun wildly in the viewport. Blue, black, blue, black. Evan engaged the thrusters. They burned hard, pushing them away from the flagship, down toward the atmosphere. They landed hard, not in a field, but in the water. The pod bobbed in the Atlantic Ocean, hissing steam. A recovery team, Evan's team. The water rescue unit he had hired on Tuesday was there within 20 minutes. They were hauled onto a fishing trawler that smelled of diesel and salt. Evan carried Lyra to the below-deck cabin. It was dim, lit only by a swinging bulb. She was barely conscious. Her skin was gray, the light gone entirely. Evan hooked her up to the portable med bay. He projected the data he had stolen onto the wall. It was incomplete. The molecular chain had gaps, huge, gaping holes where the binding agents should be. "I can't do it," Evan whispered. He stared at the alien biomath. It was nonlinear. It defied every rule of chemistry he knew. It was like trying to read music written in a color that didn't exist. "I can't fix it," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm just an engineer. Lyra, I'm just a guy who fixes toasters." "This is God Tech." He slid down the wall, burying his face in his hands. The adrenaline of the heist had evaporated, leaving only a cold, crushing weight. "I'm not enough," he sobbed. "I tried to buy an army. I tried to be a hero. But I'm just Evan. And you're going to die because I'm not smart enough." A hand touched his head. It was weak, trembling, but it was there. Evan looked up. Lyra was watching him. Her eyes were dull but clear. "You are enough," she whispered. "No, I'm not. I failed." "You did not fail," Lyra said. "You stood in front of an archivist and told him that my child was a person, not a product. No one has ever done that. Not in 1,000 years of my family's history." She cupped his face. Her thumb brushed away a tear. "I did not choose you because you are a genius, Evan. I did not choose you because you are a hero. I chose you because when you look at me, you do not see a treaty. You do not see a bloodline. You see Lyra." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "That is the only medicine that matters right now. You see me." Evan breathed in her scent, faint now, but still there. Violets and rain. He looked at the data again. He looked at the holes in the formula. He stopped seeing them as failures. He saw them as variables. "Wait," Evan said. He stood up. He walked to the projection. Soren said the stabilizer was a biocrystal, a living structure. Yes, Lyra breathed, and the drone swarm. My prototype. It mimics biological hive behavior. He tapped the screen. I don't need to synthesize the chemical, I just need to build a scaffold. If I use the nanobots to bridge the gaps in the formula. He turned to Lyra, his eyes wide. I can't build the medicine, but I can build a machine that acts like the medicine. He began to type. His fingers flew across the keyboard. The unsolvable math began to resolve, not because he solved it, but because he cheated. He replaced the missing alien biology with human engineering. It worked on the simulation. The molecular chain stabilized. But then, a red warning flashed. Missing catalyst. Inorganic resonance source required. Evan froze. The scaffold held, but it had no power source. The nanobots needed a frequency to bind them to Lyra's cells, a specific energy signature. He knew that signature. He had seen it on the star charts in the stolen data files. He turned to Lyra. I have a prototype, he said. It can save you, it can hold the pregnancy stable. But it needs a battery, a specific kind of crystal resonance. Where? Lyra asked. Evan zoomed out on the map. It wasn't on Earth. It wasn't on the ship. It was on a small, charted but forbidden moon in the outer rim of the chaotic sector. A place marked with warning beacons. A Dominion ruin, Lyra whispered, recognizing the coordinates. The moon of glass. It is forbidden. Why? Evan asked. Because that is where the old wars are buried, Lyra said. Evan looked at her. He looked at the baby growing inside her, the child that two worlds wanted to erase. Then let's go dig them up, Evan said. He went to the door and yelled up to the deck. Captain, set a course for the shuttle pad. We are going back to space. Lyra tried to sit up. Evan, she said, it is dangerous. Evan walked back to her. He kissed her forehead. Responsibility isn't control. Lyra, I can't control what happens there, but I can promise you one thing. What? She asked. We are not running alone anymore. He picked her up, wrapping the thermal blanket around her like a royal cloak. We are going to the moon. The shuttle touched down on the moon of glass with a violence that rattled Evan Park's teeth in his skull. The landing struts groaned, settling into a surface that was not dust or rock, but a fractured, translucent silica that stretched to the horizon like a frozen, shattered ocean. We are down, the pilot announced, his voice tight. External temperature is minus 100 degrees Celsius. Electromagnetic interference is high. Evan unbuckled his harness. He looked at Lyra. She was strapped into the medical cot, her face pale, her breathing shallow. The makeshift stabilizer he had coded was holding, but barely. It was a digital bandage on a biological hemorrhage. We have 4 hours, Evan said, checking his wrist comp. The storm cycle hits the northern hemisphere then. If we are not inside the ruin by then, the static charge will fry the shuttle's electronics and us along with it. The cargo bay hissed open, revealing the landscape. It was terrifyingly beautiful. The sun, distant and small, refracted through the glassy dunes, casting prisms of razor-sharp light across the white void. The sky was not black, but a bruised purple, scarred by the magnetic auroras of the gas giant the moon orbited. Evan's army, the 100 caretakers, had been whittled down to a strike team of 12. The rest were back on Earth, running decoys or in hiding. Here, it was just the essentials. 2 medics, 4 heavy security, 3 tech specialists, and the pilot, Jackson, the new security lead, a man who spoke little and shot straight, checked the seal on his environmental suit. Perimeter is clear, Jackson said. But the scanners are ghosting. Too much background radiation. We are flying blind, boss. Evan nodded. He helped Lyra into her suit. It was a bulky, insulated exosuit that hid her royal silhouette and her pregnancy. She winced as the seals pressurized. "I can walk," she whispered over the comms channel. "You do not have to," Evan said. "I need to," she insisted. "The ground. It is vibrating. I can feel it in my teeth." They set out across the glass plains. The wind was silent in the vacuum, but the dust it kicked up sparkled like diamond dust. The ruin lay 2 miles ahead, a jagged spire of black metal that looked like a wound in the sky. As they approached, the hum began. It started as a low thrum in Evan's headset, a feedback loop that defied the noise-canceling software. But for Lyra, it was something else. She stopped, clutching the side of her helmet. "It is loud," she gasped. "What is loud?" Evan asked, signaling the team to halt. "The song," Lyra said. "The building. It knows we are here. It recognizes the baby." She pointed a gloved hand at the spire. "It is afraid. Evan, the building is afraid of what is inside me." They breached the airlock of the ruin 30 minutes later. The interior was a stark contrast to the chaotic surface. It was a cathedral of silent machinery, vast walls of obsidian etched with silver circuitry that remained dormant until they passed. As Lyra walked, the silver lines flared to life, pulsing with a heartbeat rhythm that matched the distress signals on Evan's medical tablet. "This is not just a military outpost," Evan said, scanning the walls with his drone. "It is a nursery, or a laboratory." They moved deeper, descending into the moon's crust. The caretakers formed a protective diamond around Evan and Lyra, weapons raised, sweeping the shadows. They reached a central chamber. It was spherical, dominated by a massive, suspended ring of liquid metal that rotated slowly in the center. Beneath it lay a console. "The archive," Lyra whispered. She stepped toward it. The caretakers tensed as the liquid metal ring shifted, reshaping itself into a giant eye that stared down at her. Lyra placed her hand on the console. The interface screamed, a burst of data that flooded the room with holographic light. Images flickered in the air, vast and historical. They showed star systems burning. They showed treaties being signed in blood. And then, they showed the babies, rows and rows of genetic sequences, hybrid profiles. Evan stared at the data, his engineer's mind racing to catch up with the alien history. "This is not the first time," he said, his voice cold. "No," Lyra said, reading the flowing script of light. "There were others, decades ago, centuries ago." She swiped her hand, and the hologram zoomed in on a document stamped with the dual seals of a Dominion high house and a human corporation. Evan froze. He recognized the logo. It was a subsidiary of the defense contractor that had built the shuttle they were currently flying. "It is a manufacturing line," Evan realized. "The conspiracy. It is not about racial purity. It is not about tradition. It is about product." Lyra finished, her voice trembling with rage. The hologram revealed the truth in brutal detail. A shadow alliance, the third faction, composed of Dominion warmongers and human defense conglomerates. They engineered hybrid pregnancies to create heirs that could claim dual citizenship, dual inheritance, and dual legal rights. These children were bred to be puppets, perfect bridge leaders who could sign treaties that gave the alliance exclusive rights to mining, shipping lanes, and weapon sales. And when the experiments failed, or the mothers resisted, the hologram showed a purge, fire, ash, silence. "They did not want to kill me because I broke the law," Lyra said, tears streaming down her face inside the helmet. "They wanted to kill me because I did it by accident. I did it out of love, and a hybrid born of love cannot be controlled." Evan felt a sickness curl in his gut. It was the same feeling he had when he found the hidden clause in his contract, but magnified 1,000 times. The universe was not grand and mysterious. It was just a small, dirty room where powerful people sold children for copper and silicon. "We have to copy this," Evan said. "We take the proof. We burn them down." Jackson, the security lead, stepped forward. "We can't do that, sir." Evan turned. Jackson's weapon was not pointed at the shadows. It was pointed at Evan's chest. Two other guards, men Evan had paid, men Evan had eaten freeze-dried rations with, turned their rifles on the rest of the caretakers. The loyal medics and techs froze, hands raising slowly. "Jackson," Evan said, his voice surprisingly steady. "Put the gun down." "I can't," Jackson said. His tone was apologetic, professional. "The bonus for the extraction is 5 million. Each. That's retirement money. Evan, that's an island in the Pacific. You are selling a mother and a child," Evan said. "I am selling a political asset," Jackson corrected. "Don't make it personal." The airlock door behind them hissed. A ramp descended, and men in unmarked combat armor marched in. They were not Dominion, or they were human mercenaries, sleek and corporate. The Alliance, Evan realized. They were tracking us the whole time. "How?" Evan asked Jackson. "I scrubbed the ship. I jammed the signals." Jackson tapped his own chest. "Subdermal tracker. Swallowed it with my coffee this morning." "You're good, Park. But you're an amateur." The mercenaries surrounded them. A man in a suit, clean, crisp, and utterly out of place in the dusty ruins, stepped forward. He held a containment cuffs unit. "Ms. Vey," the man said smoothly. "Please step away from Mr. Park. We have a medical team waiting to stabilize you. We are here to rescue you from this unstable individual." He gestured to Evan. Evan moved to stand in front of Lyra, but Jackson's rifle butt slammed into his stomach. Evan crumpled, gasping for air. "Take him to the secondary bay," the suit commanded. "I want his statement before we liquidate. We need the narrative to be clean." Lyra screamed, reaching for Evan, but two mercenaries grabbed her arms. "Evan, don't touch her!" Evan wheezed, trying to stand, but a boot pinned him to the floor. Jackson looked down at him. "Stay down, kid. You're done." The secondary bay was a cold, dark room that smelled of ozone and ancient grease. Evan was thrown into a chair, his wrists zip-tied to the armrests. The man in the suit paced in front of him. A drone hovered at eye level, its camera lens dilating like a pupil. "State your name," the man said. Evan spit blood onto the floor. "Evan Park. State your intent," the man continued. "You kidnapped Envoy Vey. You drugged her. You manipulated a diplomatic crisis to extort the Dominion." Evan looked up. "Is that the script?" "It is the truth the world will believe," the man said. "The brilliant, lonely engineer. The obsession. It is a classic tragedy. And Lyra. She is the victim. Stockholm Syndrome. We will treat her, of course. She will raise the child in a secure facility. She will be grateful." He leaned in close. "Just say it. Evan, confess. We will give you a plea deal. Life in a nice facility. Books, internet. You can still code." Evan looked at the drone. He looked at the man. He thought about the spreadsheet he had made, the 100 caretakers, the diapers he had ordered in bulk, the nights he had spent holding Lyra's hair back while she threw up from morning sickness that spanned 2 species. "I did not kidnap her," Evan said. The man sighed. "Don't be difficult. We chose each other," Evan said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the small room. "We chose pizza on Fridays. We chose to watch bad movies. We chose to be terrified together." He looked directly into the camera lens, Consent, Evan said. Partnership. Choice. You can't write that out of the script because you don't understand it. You think power is control, but power is, it is just showing up. The man signaled the guard, hit him. The blow struck Evan's jaw, snapping his head back. Darkness swam at the edge of his vision. Again, the man said. Another blow. Evan tasted copper. He laughed. It was a wet, broken sound. You can kill me, Evan wheezed, but you can't make it a lie. Conspiracies thrive on shame. And I am not ashamed. I am just in love. The man adjusted his cuffs. Kill him. Make it look like a struggle. The guard raised his pistol. Suddenly, the lights in the room died. Not just a flicker, total abyssal blackout. Then, the hum returned, the song of the ruin. But this time, it was not a melody. It was a scream. The door to the interrogation room exploded inward, not blown by explosives, but crushed, crumpled like tissue paper by an invisible force. A silhouette stood in the doorway. It was glowing. Lyra. She was not wearing the bulky exosuit. She had shed it. She stood in her tunic, her skin radiating a blinding violet light that pulsed in time with the building's heartbeat. The guard spun around. Target act. He never finished the sentence. A wave of force, gravity manipulation, amplified by the ruin's tech, lifted him off his feet and slammed him into the ceiling. He dropped, unconscious. The man in the suit backed away, terrified. What are you? Lyra stepped into the room. Her eyes were solid white. The ancient machinery in the walls was reacting to her, shifting, forming protective spikes around her. I am a mother, Lyra said. Her voice was layered, echoing with the sound of the archive. And I am done being handled. She raised a hand. The man in the suit slid across the floor, pinned against the wall by gravity. Get out, she whispered. The man scrambled, crawling over the unconscious guard, fleeing into the dark corridor. Evan stared at her. The glow began to fade, her eyes returning to their deep, dark pools. She stumbled, the power draining from her instantly. Lyra! Evan ripped his hands free from the zip ties. Adrenaline was a hell of a drug and caught her before she hit the floor. She was burning up. The display of power had cost her. The crystal. She gasped. Evan! The crystal! Evan looked at the readout on his wrist. Her vitals were crashing. The baby's heart rate was erratic. The stabilizer chamber, Evan said. We have to get to the crystal, and what about the mercenaries? Lyra smiled weakly. The building, it locked the doors. They are trapped in the outer ring. We are the only ones in the core. Evan picked her up. He ran. They reached the shelter, a small alcove carved directly into the heart of the crystal vein. The walls here were raw, jagged quartz that hummed with pure energy. It was quiet. The chaos of the betrayal, the noise of the mercenaries, it all felt miles away. Evan laid Lyra on the floor. He pulled the drone swarm from his belt. The tiny machines floated up, forming a halo of silver dust. He took the raw sample of the moon crystal he had grabbed from the archive room. He placed it in the center of the drone cloud. I have to integrate it, Evan said, his hands trembling as he typed the final command sequence on his tablet. I have to teach the nanobots to carry the crystal's resonance into your blood. He looked at her. This is going to hurt, Lyra. It is going to feel like fire. Lyra reached up and took his hand. Her grip was weak, but her fingers interlaced with his, locking tight. I am not afraid of fire, she whispered. I am afraid of leaving you. Evan leaned down. He pressed his forehead to hers. You are not going anywhere. We have a nursery to build. We have to argue about paint colors. Lyra laughed, a small, breathless sound. Yellow, she said. What? Yellow paint, she murmured. For the room, it mimics the sun. Yellow, Evan agreed, tears spilling onto his cheeks. We will paint it the ugliest yellow in the galaxy. He kissed her. It was a desperate, terrified kiss, tasting of blood and salt. It was a vow spoken without words. I am here. I am yours. Stay. He pulled back. Ready? Ready. Evan activated the swarm. The cinematic moment unfolded in microscopic detail on the tablet screen, projected large against the crystal wall. The drones, carrying the blue luminescence of the moon crystal, entered Lyra's bloodstream. They moved like a constellation finding order. They wove through her DNA, stitching the gaps, bridging the human and the Asteri, calming the storm. Lyra arched her back, a silent cry of agony escaping her lips as the heat hit her. Evan held her. He held her through the convulsions. He held her as the light under her skin flared white, then blue, then settled into a soft, steady gold. The hum of the ruin died down to a gentle lullaby. Lyra took a deep breath. It was a clean, easy breath. The monitor beeped. Maternal vitals, stable. Fetal vitals, stable. Hybridization, complete. Evan slumped back against the wall, exhaustion hitting him like a hammer. He looked at Lyra. She was sleeping. It was a deep, restorative sleep. She looked peaceful. He watched her for a long time. He watched her chest rise and fall. He watched the way her hand still clutched his. They were alive, but they were not safe. A chime on the console woke him from his daze. It was the communication array, the one in the archive room. It was active. Evan stood up, his legs wobbling. He walked to the console. Someone had bypassed the localized jamming. Someone was broadcasting, not to them, from them. The archive, Evan realized, when Lyra connected. She didn't just view the data, she triggered a release. He looked at the screen. Transmission status, global, Earth, Dominion Rim. Evan tapped the audio feed. A voice, synthesized and anonymous, filled the room. It was broadcasting on every frequency, hijacking every screen from Times Square to the bridge of the Ethelgard. Citizens of Earth, subjects of the Dominion. You have been told that we are enemies. You have been told that separation is safety. The screen flashed images from the archive, the treaties, the payments, the signatures of the alliance leaders. You have been sold a war to pay for their peace. Then, the image changed. It was a video file, grainy, candid. It was the footage from the apartment. Evan holding the clipboard, Lyra laughing at the pickle jar, the kiss, the fear, the love. They wanted you to believe this child was a weapon. They wanted you to believe these parents were criminals. The voice grew harder. But the child is not a weapon. She is the key to ownership of two worlds, and she belongs to no one but herself. Her name is Vay Park, and she is alive. Evan stared at the screen. The broadcast ended with a single coordinate, the location of the moon of glass. The silence that followed was heavy. Evan looked back at Lyra, who was stirring awake. She looked at him, then at the screen. What did we do? She whispered. Evan looked at the coordinates. He looked at the sky, where he knew ships, friend and foe, would soon be burning hard toward them. We didn't do anything, Evan said, taking her hand again. We just started the revolution. The broadcast from the moon of glass did not bring peace. It brought noise. It was a wall of sound that hit Earth and the orbiting Dominion fleet with the force of a physical blow. The silence of the vacuum was replaced by the cacophony of a billion opinions. The internet, that fragile nervous system of humanity, convulsed. In the 48 hours following the revelation of Lyra's pregnancy and the existence of the Shadow Alliance, the world did not unite. It fractured. Evan Park sat in the back of a windowless command van, parked 3 levels deep in an abandoned subway tunnel in New Jersey, watching the chaos unfold on a wall of monitors. He looked tired, not the sleep-deprived tired of a grad student, but the bone-deep exhaustion of a man who has become a symbol against his will. On screen 1, a protest in Tokyo showed thousands of people wearing hybrid masks, cheap plastic things that split a human face with an alien one, chanting for the baby's protection. They were calling it the Star Child. It made Evan cringe. On screen 2, a cable news pundit was screaming that Lyra Vey was a biological Trojan horse sent to infect the human gene pool. On screen 3, the worst one, was an interview with Evan's cousin, Greg. Greg, who Evan hadn't spoken to in 6 years, was sitting on a talk show couch, weeping fake tears and claiming Evan had always had a dark obsession with off-world artifacts. "They are offering him a book deal," said Sarah, the head nurse, placing a mug of tea on the console. $300,000 for the rights to your childhood trauma. Evan stared at the screen. "I hope he takes it. He owes me $50 for a pizza from 2010. He rubbed his face. The van smelled of ozone and damp concrete. This was the new headquarters of the Caretakers. The 100 professionals Evan had hired in a panic were no longer just employees. They were a movement. The broadcast had acted as a recruitment beacon. The team had swelled. There were hackers in Seattle rerouting Dominion surveillance feeds. There were ex-special forces in London securing safe houses. There were doctors in Mumbai peer-reviewing Evan's stabilizer code on encrypted channels. But the enemy was moving faster. The Dominion High Council, panicked by the leak and the exposure of the alliance, had declared a state of diplomatic emergency. They had accelerated the timeline. A peace and resolution summit was scheduled to take place in Geneva in 12 hours. It was a trap. Everyone in the van knew it. The invitation had arrived an hour ago, encrypted with a biometric lock. It promised safe passage for Envoy Vey and Mr. Park to discuss the future of the asset. They call her an asset even in the invitation. Miller growled from the corner. He was cleaning a rifle that looked large enough to take down a shuttle. "If you walk into that hall, you are not walking out. It is protective custody. That is Fed speak for a black site." "I know," Evan said. He turned to the center map. It showed the United Nations complex in Geneva. It was a fortress. Anti-air batteries, Dominion gravity drones, human military cordons. "But we are going anyway," Evan said. The van went silent. Evan stood up. He walked to the map. "We can't run forever. Lyra needs medical care that we can't provide in a van. The stabilizer I built on the moon is a patch, not a cure. And this conspiracy, if we don't kill it, it will hunt the baby for the rest of its life." He tapped the location of the main assembly hall. "They want a summit? We will give them a summit. We are going to use their own stage to finish what the broadcast started." "How?" Sarah asked. "You are an engineer." "Evan, not a magician." Evan smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. "I still have the data from the archive. I only broadcast the teaser trailer. The rest of it, the names, the bank accounts, the genetic logs of every failed experiment, it is sitting on my drive." He looked at his team. "We are going to walk in the front door. We are going to smile, and then we are going to turn the spotlight into a blade." The preparation for the summit was less like a military operation and more like the backstage of a theater production run by lunatics. The Caretakers split into operational cells. The media team, led by a 19-year-old hacker named Jinx, was responsible for hijacking the global feed once the summit began. The tunnel rats were mapping the sewers beneath Geneva to plant extraction drones. The medical wing was retrofitting a diplomatic limousine into a mobile delivery room. just in case. And then there was Evan's personal hell, the wardrobe department. Stand still. The etiquette coach snapped. She was a terrifying woman named Madame Leclerc, a former protocol officer for the UN who had come out of retirement solely because she found the idea of an alien baby delightfully scandalous. Evan was standing on a crate in the middle of the tunnel, wearing a tuxedo that cost more than his car. "You are slouching," Leclerc admonished, poking him in the spine with a stylus. "An Asteri bow is from the hips, not the waist. If you bow from the waist, you are insulting their ancestors. If you bow from the hips, you are acknowledging their superiority." "I don't want to acknowledge their superiority," Evan grumbled, trying to adjust the collar that was strangling him. "Then bow 15 degrees, she said. "That implies polite indifference. And do not fidget. You are representing humanity. Mr. Park, try not to look like you are searching for a calculator." "I am always searching for a calculator," Evan muttered. Lyra watched from the cot where she was resting. She looked better than she had on the moon, the golden hue of the stabilizer humming under her skin. But she was heavy with the weight of the child. The pregnancy was accelerating again. The hybrid physiology meant she was effectively 8 months along, despite it only being weeks since conception. "You look handsome," she said, her voice soft. "I look like a penguin who manages a hedge fund," Evan said, stepping down from the crate. He walked over to her. He knelt, ignoring Madame Leclerc's gasp at the wrinkles he was putting in the pants, and took her hand. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Lyra squeezed his fingers. Her grip was strong. "I am sure. I am tired of hiding. Evan, I am tired of letting them tell my story." She looked at the dress hanging on the mannequin nearby. It was not the gray, formless tunic of an envoy. It was deep crimson, woven with silver thread. It was the color of House Vey. "To wear that is treason," Evan noted. "To wear that is the truth," Lyra corrected. The arrival at the Geneva summit was a sensory overload. The sky above the lake was filled with the silent, hovering shapes of Dominion cruisers, their shadows casting long palls over the water. The streets were lined with thousands of people, protesters, supporters, military police in riot gear. The limousine moved through the checkpoint. A scanner swept the vehicle. Biosignatures confirmed. A robotic voice announced, "Envoy Vey, Subject Park, proceed." Evan sat inside, his hands sweating in Lyra's. He checked his watch. The caretakers were in position. The tunnel team was green. The media team was green. "Showtime," he whispered. The doors opened. The flashbulbs were blinding. A wall of white light hit them, accompanied by the roar of the crowd. Evan stepped out first. He remembered Leclerc's training. He buttoned his jacket. He stood straight. He offered a hand to Lyra. When she emerged, the crowd went silent. She was radiant. The crimson dress flowed around her like liquid metal. She did not look like a victim. She did not look like a fugitive. She looked like a queen who had come to burn the castle down. They walked the red carpet not as celebrities, but as targets. Evan scanned the rooftops. He knew Miller was up there somewhere, disguised as a sniper, watching the other snipers. They entered the Great Hall. It was a cavernous space, the seats filled with the most powerful humans and aliens in the system. The air smelled of expensive cologne and fear. At the head of the room sat the High Council of the Asteri, 3 beings on floating dais, their faces masked in ceremonial gold. Beside them sat the Secretary General of the United Nations and the CEO of the defense firm that had tried to kill them on the moon. Lyra Vey, the center counselor, spoke, his voice amplified by the room's acoustics. "You have returned." "I have," Lyra said. Her voice did not shake. "You stand accused of biological treason," the counselor said. "You have broken the separation accords. You have endangered the stability of two civilizations. I have endangered your profit margins." Lyra shot back. A murmur rippled through the hall. Evan stepped forward. He pulled a small silver disc from his pocket. It looked like a coaster. It was a data projector. "We are not here to argue about treason," Evan said. His voice cracked once, then steadied. "We are here to talk about the third faction." The CEO on the stage stood up. "This is a diplomatic summit, not a forum for conspiracy theories. Security, remove this man." "Sit down," Evan said. He didn't shout it. He said it with the calm, absolute certainty of an engineer who knows exactly how much load a bridge can take before it snaps. He pressed the disc. The air in the great hall shimmered. Holograms bloomed. They were massive, 50 feet tall, filling the vaulted ceiling. They were not just documents. They were videos. They were financial records. They were conversations recorded in the archive on the moon of glass. One hologram showed the counselor signing an order to liquidate a hybrid nursery 20 years ago. Another showed the human CEO transferring $4 billion to a black budget account labeled Project Silica. The hall erupted. Delegates were shouting. The press gallery was in a frenzy, cameras pivoting from the stage to the damning lights above. "This is a fabrication," the CEO screamed. Evan tapped his watch. "Jinx, go live." The holograms didn't just stay in the hall. They hit the stream. Every screen in Times Square, every data pad in the Dominion fleet, every phone in the pocket of the protesters outside lit up with the same undeniable proof. Lyra stepped into the center of the chaotic floor. She looked up at the High Council. "You call me a minor envoy," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You erased my lineage to keep me quiet. But I am not a pawn." She pulled the pins from her hair. It cascaded down her back, glowing with the undeniable bioluminescence of the royal line. "I am Lyra of House Vey, daughter of the third son, and I claim my right to speak." The counselors froze. To deny a royal claim in public was to invite immediate challenge. "I renounce my title," Lyra declared. The words hung in the air like smoke. "I renounce my claim to the throne. I renounce the protection of the houses." She placed a hand on her stomach. "This child is not an heir. This child is not a weapon. This child is a person, and she belongs to the universe, not to you." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a political structure collapsing in real time. Then, the conspiracy broke the silence. "Medical emergency," a voice shouted from the side. A team of paramedics, too well-armored, too fast, rushed the floor. "She is going into shock. The hybrid toxins are spiking. We need to extract her immediately." It was the play, the script the man in the suit had threatened Evan with. Frame Lyra as unstable. Seize her under the guise of saving her. Evan saw them coming. He saw the needle in the lead medic's hand. It wasn't adrenaline. It was a sedative. "No!" Evan yelled. He didn't reach for a weapon. He reached for his lapel. "Caretakers, engage!" The waiters serving water to the delegates dropped their trays. They pulled flash batons from their aprons. The press photographers in the gallery dropped their cameras and pulled out stun rifles. The hall turned into a war zone. Smoke grenades popped, filling the air with thick, white fog. The flash of energy weapons strobed through the gloom. "Get her out!" Evan screamed into his comms. Miller descended from the ceiling on a rappel line, crashing through a skylight. He landed next to Lyra, spinning and firing a suppression round at the fake medics. "Move!" Miller roared. The crowd panicked. Dignitaries scrambled over chairs. The air was filled with the sound of breaking glass and the high-pitched whine of drones. Evan's drone swarm, which had been dormant in his briefcase, exploded outward. They didn't form a healing cloud this time. They formed a wall, a spinning razor-sharp barrier of metal that cut off the stage from the floor. Evan ran to Lyra. She was doubling over, clutching her stomach. "Is it the baby?" Evan asked, grabbing her. "No," she gasped. They activated something. Her skin was flickering, and the golden glow of the stabilizer was turning a sickly, pulsing red. The kill switch, Evan realized with horror. They broadcast a signal. "They are shutting down the stabilizer. We need to leave," Miller shouted, firing at a squad of corporate security pushing through the smoke. "The tunnels are blown. We have to go up to the roof. Extraction chopper is 1 minute out." They moved through the chaos. Evan supported Lyra, taking her weight. The hall was a labyrinth of overturned tables and screaming diplomats. A figure stepped out of the smoke in front of them. It was Director Cole. He looked unruffled, holding a heavy pistol. "Stop," Cole said. Evan froze. Miller raised his rifle, but Cole shook his head. "I have snipers on the balcony. Miller, you drop me." "They dropped the girl." Miller hesitated. Cole looked at Evan. "Mr. Park, you have made a magnificent mess, but it is over." Cole gestured to a side door that had just opened. A team of agents stood there. "Walk through that door." "Evan, alone. We have a car waiting. New identity. Full immunity. We will say you were a hostage. You can go back to building robots. You can live." Evan looked at the door. It was freedom. It was safety. Then he looked at Lyra. She was shaking, the red veins spreading across her neck. She looked at him, and she didn't ask him to stay. She didn't beg. She just looked at him with that same scientific curiosity, wondering if his data points would finally predict self-preservation. Evan looked at Cole. "You still don't get it, do you?" Evan said. He let go of Lyra's waist, stepping between her and the gun. "I don't want to live if it means I have to be like you." He raised his hand. He was holding the remote for the drones. "But I am not going alone." He pressed the button. The drone wall he had built didn't attack Cole. It attacked the building. The swarm flew upward, slamming into the massive crystal chandelier that hung above the center of the hall. The support cable snapped. The chandelier, weighing 4 tons, crashed down between them and Cole. The impact shook the foundation. Debris flew everywhere. The floor collapsed, creating a barrier of shattered crystal and twisted metal. "Go!" Evan yelled. They scrambled up the debris pile, heading for the service stairs to the roof. They burst out into the cold Swiss air. The wind was whipping off the lake. A black helicopter, unmarked but flown by a Caretaker pilot, was hovering dangerously close to the edge. "Jump!" Miller yelled, tossing Lyra into the open door. Evan scrambled in after her. The helicopter banked hard, diving toward the water just as the roof door burst open and security forces opened fire. Bullets pinged off the fuselage. "We are hit!" the pilot shouted. "Losing hydraulic pressure. Get us to the safe house," Evan yelled. "We can't make the safe house." The pilot struggled with the stick. "We have to set down. The old train yard. 5 miles out. In the back," Lyra screamed. It was a sound that tore through Evan's heart. He looked at her. The stabilizer was failing. The red light was consuming her. "She is going into labor," Sarah said, checking the monitor. "Now?" Evan asked. "Now," Sarah said grimly. "And the kill switch is active. Her blood is turning into poison." Evan grabbed his laptop. He plugged it into the portable medical unit. "I can override it," he said, his fingers flying across the keys. "I can hack the signal." He looked at the code. It was complex. Dominion military encryption. "I need time," Evan shouted. "We don't have time," Sarah yelled back. Her heart rate is 200. She is going to cardiac arrest. The helicopter slammed into the ground, skidding across the gravel of the train yard. It groaned and tilted, the rotors shattering against a rusted boxcar. Silence returned for a second. Then, the sirens began. Distant, but getting closer. Evan unbuckled. He looked at Lyra. She was conscious, but barely. Evan, she whispered. He leaned in. Save the baby, she said. If you have to choose. Save the baby. Evan looked at her. He looked at the woman who had crossed the stars to find him. I am saving both of you, he said fiercely. He turned to the caretakers. Miller, Perimeter, Sarah, get the kit. We are doing this here. Here? Miller looked at the rusted train yard. The rain starting to fall. Here, Evan said. He looked at the approaching lights of the pursuit vehicles. They want a show? We'll give them a finale. The safety net had not just broken, it had incinerated. Every contingency plan Evan Park had meticulously crafted in his spreadsheets over the last 8 months was gone. The private hospitals he had retained were surrounded by Dominion peacekeeping forces. The safe houses in the city were burning, their locations leaked by the same data breach that had tried to frame him. The extraction pilot who had flown them out of the ruins of the Geneva summit had managed to get their battered transport across the Atlantic on a suborbital trajectory before the hydraulics failed completely, forcing a hard, bone-shattering landing in the Nevada basin. Now, they were running on adrenaline and fumes. The improvised sanctuary was a derelict geothermal research station buried deep under a sandstone ridge. It was a relic of the mid-21st century, a concrete bunker that smelled of dry rot, copper wire, and 50 years of abandoned silence. The wind outside was a constant abrasive scream, sand scraping against the blast doors like millions of tiny claws trying to get in. Inside. The air was thick with the hum of a backup generator that sounded like it was dying of emphysema. Evan stood over a rusted console, his fingers flying across a keyboard that was sticky with dust. He was not wearing the tuxedo from the summit anymore. He was in shirt sleeves, stained with oil and blood, his tie hanging loose around his neck like a noose. Focus, he whispered to himself. Just focus on the syntax, on the screen. The code of the kill switch, the malicious signal the conspirators had broadcast to destabilize Lyra's blood, was a red, pulsing wall. It was eating through his stabilizer patch. It was aggressive, adaptive, and seemingly sentient. Behind him, in the center of what used to be a geology lab, the caretakers had built a miracle out of plastic and determination. They had hung sterile sheets from the ceiling tracks to create a clean room. Portable floodlights, salvaged from the crash, bathed the space in a harsh, white glare. Lyra lay on a cot in the center of the light. She was terrified. The royal composure she had worn at the summit, the fierce protectiveness she had shown on the moon of glass, it was all gone. What remained was a woman in the throes of a biological crisis that no textbook had ever described. Her skin was shifting colors rapidly, flashing from her natural iridescent violet to a bruised, sickly gray. The monitors hooked up to her were screaming a discord of alarms. Evan, she gasped. Evan spun around, abandoning the code instantly. He was at her side in 2 strides, dropping to his knees. I am here, he said. I am right here. It burns, Lyra whispered, gripping his hand so hard her knuckles turned white. It feels like I am coming apart. You are not coming apart, Evan said, his voice low and steady, though his own heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. You are fighting. The baby is fighting. He took a wet cloth from a basin and wiped the sweat from her forehead. He did not look at the monitors. He looked at her eyes. Tell me what you need. Lyra. I need it to stop. I cannot make it stop yet, Evan said honestly. But I can hold the line. He pressed her hand to his cheek. Tell me what hurts. Everything. She sobbed. The gravity. It feels too heavy. Evan looked at Sarah, the head nurse. Adjust the pressure, Evan commanded. Sarah nodded, her face grim. She adjusted the dials on the portable atmospheric regulator they had rigged up. We are maxing out the oxygen. Evan, if we go any higher, we risk toxicity. Do it, Evan said. Her physiology needs the density. He turned back to Lyra. Listen to me. You are safe. I have the perimeter locked. I have the code almost cracked. You just have to breathe. Lyra looked at him. In the harsh light, he saw the raw terror in her gaze. It was not the fear of pain. It was the fear of absence. If I die, she whispered, her voice hitching. If I die before I see her face. Evan, you are not going to die. Evan interrupted. He did not say it as a comfort. He said it as an order. I did not hire an army, crash a summit, and steal a spaceship just to lose you in a basement in Nevada. Do you understand? Lyra managed a weak, watery smile. You are very bossy for a human, she murmured. I am an engineer, Evan said, kissing her knuckles. I hate broken things. And we are not broken. A heavy thud echoed from the blast doors at the entrance of the facility. Then another. The facility shook. Dust rained down from the ceiling cracks. Miller's voice crackled over the short-range radio. Boss, we have company. Evan stood up, his hand lingering on Lyra's for a second longer before he walked to the security monitor. The grainy black and white feed showed the desert outside. It was no longer empty. 3 heavy transport ships had touched down on the ridge. Men in tactical armor were deploying. They were not moving with the stealth of the intelligence agents or the precision of the Dominion Guard. These were cleaners. They were mercenaries paid to erase a mistake. And in the center of the formation, standing calmly amidst the swirling sand, was a projection. It was Archivist Soren. He was not physically there. He was too cowardly for that. But his hologram stood 10 feet tall, projected from a drone, glowing blue against the night. Patch him through, Evan said. Miller hesitated. Evan, patch him through. The speakers in the lab crackled. Soren's voice, smooth and cultured, filled the room. Mr. Park, Envoy Vey, I see you have found a hole to hide in. Lyra flinched at the sound of his voice. Evan stepped in front of the speaker, as if his body could block the sound waves. Go away, Soren, Evan said. We can end this, Soren said. The kill switch is accelerating. I can see the telemetry from here. Lyra has less than 1 hour before her heart fails. There was a pause, heavy and suffocating. I have the counter code, Soren said. I can deactivate the signal. I can save her life. What is the price? Evan asked, though he already knew. The child, Soren said. Hand over the infant immediately upon birth. We will take it to the Dominion. It will be raised in the royal nursery. It will be safe. It will be educated. And Lyra will live. And if we refuse, then she dies, Soren said simply. And we take the child from her corpse. It is a simple calculation. Mr. Park, 1 life for another, or 2 deaths. Evan looked at Lyra. She was struggling to sit up, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She looked at the speaker, then at her stomach, then at Evan. For a moment, Evan saw the calculation running in her eyes, the desperate math of a mother who would burn the world to keep her child breathing. But then, she shook her head. No, she whispered. Soren heard it. You are choosing death. Lyra? I am choosing freedom, Lyra rasped, her voice gaining strength from her anger. If I give her to you, she is dead anyway. You will turn her into a symbol. You will turn her into a treaty. She reached out and grabbed Evan's arm, pulling herself up. Tell him. Evan. Evan looked at the hologram on the screen. He thought of the weeks of fear, the running, the hiding. He thought of the way Lyra had looked at him in the lab, mapping his loneliness. He realized that the greatest weapon they had was not the drone swarm, or the stabilizer, or the archive data. It was 2 letters. No, Evan said. Mr. Park, Soren warned. No, Evan repeated. You do not get to own us. You do not get to own her. We are not assets. We are a family. And you are trespassing. He cut the feed. The silence that followed was short. Breach! Miller yelled from the tunnel entrance. They are blowing the doors! The explosion rocked the foundation of the facility. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into darkness before the red emergency floods kicked in. They are inside! Jackson shouted over the comms. Sector 4 is overrun! Evan turned to the room. The caretakers were standing there. These were not soldiers. They were the people he had hired from a panic-induced Google search. Pierre, the chef who specialized in calming soups, was holding a heavy cast-iron skillet. Mrs. Gable, the midwife who had told Evan to grow a spine, was calmly snapping on a fresh pair of latex gloves. The nutritionist was loading a flare gun. Listen to me, Evan shouted. We hold this room. No one enters, Miller. Evan keyed his radio. Buy us time. I'm on it. Boss. Outside in the corridor, the battle began. It was chaotic and loud. The mercenaries had advanced tech, but the caretakers had the home field advantage of a crumbling maze. Evan watched on the monitor as one of the decoy teams, 3 college students he had hired to wear hoodies and run in different directions, activated a holographic projector. A false hallway appeared in the rock wall. 2 mercenaries ran straight into solid stone, knocking themselves out. In the ventilation shafts, the tunnel team released a canister of the chef's concentrated pepper extract into the air intake. On the screen, a squad of elite soldiers fell to their knees, coughing and clawing at their masks. It was absurd. It was desperate. It was heroic. But they were losing ground. Evan, Sarah shouted. She is crowning. Evan spun around. The plastic curtains were pulled back. Lyra was arching her back, a scream tearing from her throat that sounded like metal shearing. The kill switch, Evan yelled. He dove back to the console. The red wall of code was spiking. It was trying to stop the baby's heart before it could beat on its own. I need 2 minutes, Evan shouted, his fingers blurring. We don't have 2 minutes. Mrs. Gable yelled, her voice cutting through the gunfire echoing from the hall. Push. Honey, you have to push. I can't, Lyra cried. It hurts. Evan looked at the code. He looked at the complexity of it. He realized he couldn't rewrite it line by line. There was no time for elegance. He had to break it. He grabbed the primary power cable for the facility's mainframe. What are you doing? The tech specialist screamed. I am overclocking the stabilizer, Evan yelled. I am going to push so much voltage through the patch that it burns the kill signal out. It will fry the grid. I know. Evan typed the command. Override safety protocols. Maximum output. He slammed the enter key. Sparks showered from the ceiling. The lights in the facility flared with blinding intensity. The hum of the generator turned into a roar. On the cot, Lyra gasped. The golden light under her skin turned brilliant, incandescent. The kill signal on the screen shattered. The red wall collapsed, but the backlash hit the facility hard. Circuits blew. The blast doors to the lab groaned, losing their magnetic seal. They are through, Miller yelled, backing into the room, firing his rifle at the doorway. Mercenaries poured into the anteroom. Bullets pinged off the metal doorframe. Pierre the chef threw a pot of boiling water. He had been sterilizing instruments into the face of the first attacker. The man screamed and fell back. "Hold the line!" Miller roared, using his body as a shield. Evan abandoned the computer. He ran to the cot. "Now! Lyra! Now!" Lyra gripped his hand. She looked at him, her eyes wide, shifting from violet to gold to human brown. "I am here," Evan whispered. "Look at me. Just look at me." She screamed one last time, a sound of pure, primal power. And then, silence. The gunfire seemed to stop. The roar of the generator faded as the breakers finally blew, plunging the room into a heavy, dusty quiet, lit only by the fading battery of the emergency floods. A sound broke the silence. It was not a siren. It was not a threat. It was a cry. Small, wet, furious. Mrs. Ungable lifted the bundle. She worked with the efficiency of a woman who had seen 1,000 miracles and was not impressed by gunfire. She wiped the child's face. She wrapped it in a thermal blanket. She looked at Evan. She smiled. "It's a girl," she whispered. She handed the bundle to Lyra. Lyra's hands were shaking, but she took the child. She pulled the blanket back. Evan leaned in. The baby was small. She had 10 fingers and 10 toes. She had a tuft of dark hair like Evan's. But when she opened her eyes, Evan stopped breathing. They were not human eyes, and they were not Asteri eyes. They were shifting, swirling with colors that moved like dawn reflecting on moving water. Gold, violet, blue, endless and deep. The baby looked at Evan. She stopped crying. She stared at him with an intensity that silenced the room. Even the mercenaries at the door had stopped firing. For a second, the sheer weight of the moment pressed down on everyone. A new thing had entered the universe. "We did it," Lyra whispered, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. Evan kissed her forehead. He kissed the baby's head. He stood up. He walked to the communication console. It was running on backup battery power. "Is the uplink still active?" he asked the tech. "Barely." "Open the channel," Evan said. "To whom?" "To everyone." The tech nodded. "Channel open." Evan picked up the microphone. He did not look at the mercenaries who were regrouping at the door. He looked at the camera. "This is Evan Park," he said. His voice was tired, but it did not shake. "You have been told that this child is a threat. You have been told that she is a weapon to be owned, or a monster to be feared." He looked over his shoulder at Lyra, holding the baby. "Her name is Vay Park. She was born 3 minutes ago in a bunker in the desert. She has her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness." He turned back to the camera. "We are uploading the full archive now. Every name, every account number, every person who tried to sell a child for a seat at the table. We are done hiding." He leaned in close to the lens. "She is not a crown. She is not a cage. She is the future. And if you want her, you will have to go through us. All of us." He cut the feed. The facility groaned. The power was failing completely now. The air scrubbers died. Miller limped over. He was bleeding from the shoulder. "Boss," he said, "we have maybe 5 minutes before they breach the inner circle, and we can't hold them." Evan looked at the room. The caretakers were exhausted, battered, but standing tall. "We are not staying," Evan said. He pointed to the rear of the lab. Behind the heavy equipment was a service tunnel, an exhaust port for the geothermal turbines. "The vents?" Miller asked. "The vents," Evan said. They moved fast. Mrs. Gable helped Lyra stand. Evan took the baby, holding her against his chest, marveling at the heat she radiated. They scrambled into the tunnel just as the front doors were blown off their hinges. The tunnel was dark, hot, and smelled of sulfur. They crawled for what felt like miles, the sounds of the facility being tossed apart fading behind them. They emerged into the night air. They were on the backside of the ridge, hidden from the mercenary ships by the rock face. Waiting there was a convoy, not high-tech hover cars, but battered off-road rovers that the decoy team had staged days ago. The desert stretched out before them, vast and empty. Evan helped Lyra into the passenger seat of the lead rover. He placed the baby in her arms. He looked back at the facility. Smoke was rising from the vents. The flashing lights of Dominion dropships were blotting out the stars above the ridge. "They will follow us," Lyra said softly. "Let them," Evan said, climbing into the driver's seat. He started the engine. It coughed, then roared to life. He looked at Lyra. She was exhausted, battered, a fugitive of two worlds. But she was looking down at their daughter with a look of absolute, terrifying love. She looked up at him. "Where are we going?" she asked. Evan looked at the horizon, where the first hint of the sun was starting to bleed purple into the black sky. He didn't have a spreadsheet. He didn't have a plan. "I don't know," Evan said. He put the rover in gear, and for the first time in his life, that was okay. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers over the bundle in her lap. "Let's go find out." He hit the gas. The rover tore off into the darkness, leaving the burning facility behind, driving straight into the open, dangerous, beautiful unknown.